I'd like to welcome everybody out to our City Council meeting for Wednesday, March 13th. Review of tonight's agenda. Anything we need to address for tonight's agenda? No? Okay. Any future agenda items that we need that the council doesn't bring forward? Okay. Well, we will go on to 3.1, conceptual design of Juniper Canyon recreational area. Yes.
So they give me to go from side to side?
I just want to make a story.
One on the ground. Yep. Alright. So we'll start today off with a really high note. So the Juniper Canyon Recreation Area at, well, let's see. Is that me doing? No, that's not.
Is it dim enough in here for everybody to see, and how's it picking up on the camera?
Well, it should be fine because it's the website, because Facebook is down. Facebook and Instagram are down.
Okay.
But we sent out a text alert.
Don't tell them that, because all of a sudden they're all doing their changes.
No, because it's still on the website.
I spoken.
And it will go on Facebook as soon as it's back up.
You know, sometimes when you go fish with wherever you get along.
And
Okay, so the Juniper Canyon Recreation Area is something that has been Wendy Thomas and Heidi. This is Heidi, our landscape architect, Harriman City. They've got together and pulled together a presentation that we want to present to you guys. Now, in the Juniper Canyon area, we affectionately call this area here the Juniper Canyon area. And as some may know, we have a few construction.
One more reference point, Providence Hall.
Yes, excuse me. So this is Providence Hall. Here's Juniper Crest, roadway, Mountain View here at the top. There is a detention basin in this area, as well as some water lines that are planned to go through this area. And this area is widely used for running, hiking, biking. It's definitely an area that kind of accentuates the culture of Harriman City. But as these construction projects are coming through, you know, we obviously want to make sure that we're maintaining that vision. So we have in the Harriman Hills Open Space Master Plan, there's property right here that was included, called the Juniper Canyon Trailhead Trails as part, kind of in this area here. So with these existing trails that are in this area, having this spot in the master plan, knowing that we have some disruption that might happen in that area, both Heidi and Wendy wanted to team up with a consultant and just create a vision to make sure as we're reconstructing this, we're putting it back and we're going to put it back the way that is intended to be, and harnesses essentially the culture of the city, which is a very active culture. So we wanted to share that vision with you before, obviously ahead of this public open house. We're going to present this as well. So we wanted to give you guys, have some hard copies. It's going to be kind of hard to see. So we have some hard copies for you we wanted to share. So again, this is going to go to the public in an open house on March 25th. And we want the council to be apprised and know what's going on. We want you guys to see this ahead of that time. And kind of just go through it briefly just a little bit. Again, we see this area as a bit of a gateway to the Harriman Hills. There's not just this area, but the area above this area, Eric's Trail, Footloose Trail, all these highly active areas. This is essentially kind of a gateway into that area, especially that trailhead spot. Now, on your first sheet, the very top one, the things I wanted to first start with are the tracks. There's three main tracks. The one I'm starting from the bottom, the blue, is a paved multi-use. Now, in that paid multi-use, you have not your run-of-the-mill amenities that are spread throughout that blue track. And that's gonna, you can see some examples that are on here that have been presented by the consultant. Yeah.
So I love this, by the way. D.R. Horton just did a park, I can't remember where, that uses whatever category of these kind of, you know, playgrounds made out of earth materials, and it has been hugely, hugely popular. So I love that we're going that route, particularly because I do think it fits the brand that we're trying to create, and certainly reflects the quality of life of our residents. But I love the direction of going that route.
I think Purcell had talked to me just a little bit about that, and I thought it was kind of cool as well. I think, and so these types of these amenities will be on that outer, or I shouldn't say outer track, but the blue line is a paved line, and is throughout you'll have these amenities.
Right.
Now, these amenities, we're obviously, this is a concept, and we're not locked into these amenities. This is just the architect kind of helping us out with some ideas. Moving to the next sheet, we're going to highlight the circuit trail. Now, up in the higher part of these hills, there's a lot of, I hit my clicker. There's a lot of obstacle course race runners who train in these hills. And so we thought we would have a track that would have some of these obstacles throughout this other track. Yeah?
I have all these questions. Are there any other sort of obstacle courses like this? Because it's such a nice reflection, again, of the trending you're seeing with running, you know, like the mud race and the obstacle course and CrossFit, the popularity of all those. So again, I think you're playing really nicely into the trends, and particularly if there's not anything like, I've never heard of anything like this, but I think that will in fact be a fantastic draw for what you're seeing in terms of the increase in races that are just, well, this is a good chance for them to prepare for that.
Yeah. Yeah, this is definitely the intent. And so again, I have Heidi here with me to make sure that I don't say anything wrong here, and she can chime in whenever. But I don't know of outside of these actual obstacle course races of something similar to this. I think, and this is just my own knowledge, it could very well exist, but having
We're
this
gonna say
sort of
it's
course
the only
dedicated,
one.
that's what I'm gonna say.
Whatever we say is true.
The only one we know.
The only one we know of.
So I'm just going to say for the record, this is in fact the only one.
So, and then moving on to the next one, there's obviously also there's a mountain bike culture and demographic that is really in high demand in general. So all the surrounding high schools have clubs or teams, mountain bike clubs or teams that at this point are starting to exceed the amount of people on football teams. And so they're looking for places where they can go. And Corner Canyon's a very large one, it's pretty close by, and we want to offer something not just, we have these sort of tracks that are just going to be down in this area, but also up in the Harriman Hills, up even higher. But these here will have these specific sort of amenities throughout this track. So that's the third track. Heidi, anything you want to add or subtract to that?
Nope, you're doing great.
Okay. All right, so moving on to our trailhead. Now, this trailhead had a this concept came out first probably in the open space master plan. Here, and this is, we've actually had 3 options in this that will also be included in the open house, but we just put the first one up there for you to take a look at. There's obviously quite a large list there of amenities that are anticipated at this trailhead. You know, including a dog park, you've got the amphitheater, splash pad, reception center, you got the drop-off zone. There's a lot of stuff in this this area. And I'm just going to back up one slide again, just kind of show you. So again, here's Juniper Crest, and then they would access off the road coming off of Juniper Crest into there.
If the council remembers a few years back when we bought that property, I saved 5 acres or so in there. This is that property that this would be located. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Thank you, Brett.
Now on this, how many parking stalls are in Black Ridge?
We counted them. 130. Some.
So there's 138 at Black Ridge and there's 150 here, some roughly the same number. What are we going to do to avoid the same issues that we had up at Black Ridge a few years to me, seems like something that a lot of people wanna go to, and parking will quickly become an issue.
We don't have any homes
Mayor, remember
fronting
we
the road,
discussed
though.
that, we was gonna rear load the road, main road going there, not front load the houses to that road.
Well, yeah, and that was, I was just gonna say, that was the whole reason, this ingress and egress is entirely different than Black Ridge.
We
I mean,
talked
this
about
is
that
planned
too,
ahead of time for ingress egress versus after the fact.
That's
We're
why.
we're taking a strong
I
consideration.
know we've talked about along the way, but I don't see that part
To,
of it.
to your point, we have an amphitheater, we have a reception center, we have items that will draw and create the need for parking. And so that needs to get fine-tuned, needs to get looked at, we need to make sure that we're hitting those correct spaces. Again, right now, this is concept that doesn't yet.
A lot of different clubs or uses of that, not just reception.
Well, we also have the very wide road. I mean, we went with the 106. So we also have lots of road space we need to creep out.
116 or is it?
116, yeah, it's not 90. I remember that it's not 90,
So it's
but it's whatever that next one was.
We kept the right of way.
Yes, we kept the right of way, and it may come in
Parking
handy.
lot there.
Yeah, all right.
So that's that area. Now let me, to get into the next one here, the very last slide here is talking about, I'm gonna back up and I apologize. But in this area, I have a shaky hand, so maybe you can kind of tell. Right about there, there's a large detention facility. That detention facility is big enough that it was required to go to the Utah State Dam Safety Stormwater Detention. What do I call it?
Just detention facility.
Oh, stormwater detention, yeah. And so it had to go to the state for dam safety, and they've reviewed it. And we don't anticipate it's gonna be the most beautiful structure. I mean, essentially it's a dam. So here is the uphill side where the water would reside. Downstream, this is the downhill side of the dam. This is kind of the top of the dam. What we are proposing in this area are amenities in and throughout the dam. We've passed these amenities to the state, and they've given us a conceptual buy-off that would be just fine. We wanted to kind of give some additional amenities around that.
So this is in addition to everything else that's already down the trail.
That's right.
So what's our anticipated cost for all of the amenities?
Yeah, it seems kind of busy.
It is a lot. We have come up with the cost. We have not quantified this nor the tracks, but we have quantified very conceptually this area, that reception area. Very conceptually going through, we were up into around somewhere in that 8 to 11 million. So this is obviously a very large feat.
Well, no wonder it looks so cool.
Yeah.
Wait.
Really.
Now, we have the developer coming in with some of the money for this, so that's
Cool
part of
costs.
it's gonna be part of this already. So that, they're not doing all of this, and they're not doing this at the pad.
And by
Parking
part,
patches, is that how?
Yeah, they have to do so many amenities associated with the project, so we're gonna make them do some things. So we'll be bringing a split of what they wanna do.
so, out of curiosity, I'm thinking of the destination bike area in the bike track that St. George just opened. And then I'm also thinking of Draper's Trails. Can we reach out to either or both of them? I'm curious to know number of people visiting, because given the price tag, I would be very interested in knowing quantity of people, because we can assume that some percentage of the people that we're drawing in are in fact going to shop. And so I want to at least have some ROI that we could at least subjectively point to as bringing in people and perhaps, sales tax as a result. There's got to be, you certainly can't just immediately check off that high of a price tag without feeling like it's going to bring something other than a really nice park for our residents, because we could do that a whole lot cheaper.
And there is not, and kind of backing up as well, this is not necessarily even attached to any fiscal year. This is going to be a multi-phase, as well as, the track, obviously the native tracks, those are obviously a lot more economical
But
than this portion.
I would love to see if, and you're probably already thinking of this, a phasing plan of some sort, because what makes this appealing is, I don't want one here, and one here. What would be nice is to have, like a phase one that is I don't even know if it'd be the playground necessarily, this one, I think this would be a good phase one, where you have the obstacles. So it'd be nice to have, let's call this phase one with the obstacles, all of them in, because all of a sudden we're branding and it becomes a thing versus, you know, if we do it so piece by piece, we lose the impact, and we also give other people the other cities or whatnot, the opportunity to create a destination, and we lose our opportunity to be the first. And the first is important when you want to bring people into the city.
And this one, we don't have a price tag on it, right?
On what on the
The
trail,
circuit,
no,
the
I do
circuit.
not.
I love the creativity, though, I'll say that off the front. The price tag's scary, but I love the creativity of it.
I think it's good to look at comparisons, because I know St. George's been a huge success. It's just like our ice ribbon. Bountiful's building one now. They've been out here several times, looked at it. We've had a huge success with the residents and surrounding residents, neighboring communities coming in to use that.
Are we keeping track of our numbers, which is another question
yes.
on our
Yes, we do.
ice ribbon, because that will also help us understand how many are using our amenity.
It's gonna be, actually, this type of amenity, which I'll never use, because it's beyond my capability, but this will be used day by your residents.
There's a tire swing in here, Brett, I'm just saying.
That's about all I do, yeah, tires and things, probably appropriate.
Oh, if you're
But,
gonna lay it out there.
There's a parks bench.
But that's more my.
There's a park bench.
But
There's some
what I mean
grass,
is you look at this type of amenity of all the open space we have, and we've been talking about this Juniper Canyon for 10 years. What the deal was gonna be reservoir. I really like when the teams come up with to vitalizing that area, because we don't vitalize any flood through your community.
I love
Whether it be locally used or bring other people in. You'll have competitions here throughout that area.
Yeah.
It's this type of recreation now is growing, and it's hot, it's exciting, and it's healthy.
It's really good.
Which kind of brings me to some of my concerns. So
Absolutely.
overall, I think great concept, etc. But I'm having serious trouble digesting it all. One, just the number of, I don't know, variety can be a good thing, but it can be a bad thing too. Like, it just seems so busy. There's so many competing interests in one spot. The trailhead in and of itself makes me really nervous, because there's so many competing interests in one place, one consolidated parking area. Especially like the dog park. I'm a dog owner. 2 big dogs. I love them. They're friendly teddy bears, but not everybody can see friendly teddy bears. And that's tough, putting some of those uses next to each other. As a park in another city where it was warm this weekend, sunburn. But they had a great park. We were playing ball games at. There were ball fields at one end, different ball fields in the middle. There was a dog park, varying uses. But they were separated, and they had separate parking. They had separate access, which I thought was a great setup. It was never congested. I mean, there were hundreds and hundreds of people there, all day for 3 days. There was never a traffic jam. The ingress egress was great because there were different points of access around. I'm super concerned about the ingress egress. I want to see that plan really before anything else. A couple years ago, when we first started discussing this, I made the comment, show me the money. It wasn't this kind of money. It was how does this fit in with our economic plan, right? Because I think government, we're good at doing things like this that cost us money, and not just one-time money, but ongoing maintenance money, etc. These things need to be part of the economic plan. Show me how we're going to bring people in, move them in and move them out, and funnel them past those commercial centers, right? So just those couple of things. To Brett's point about events, that's what we want to bring to this area. If you have any kind of event, 150 parking spaces is not going to be enough.
And we know that. And to the councilman's point, I will say the team has gotten together. One thing we're struggling on all of our trail system is finding places to put parking lots.
So
And base is our only first good opportunity.
I would much rather do the entire thing as a parking lot, because you still have the rest of the trail system as amenities. You know what I mean? So I think we need to put that piece of the planning first before all the cool stuff, if that makes sense. Because there's lots of cool stuff here, but for me to look at, honestly, it's overwhelming. So lots of great ideas and lots of cool stuff. I think we've got to put that basic planning in place and then fit the cool stuff in, if that makes sense.
So we'll look for lots of different direction from council, and we all had different ideas. I agree that you can put a dog park in over here again, or a resident screen for dog parks. Everybody wants them, but they don't want it next to them. All these things, they want them, they don't want them next to them.
I think we can find a place.
That's where
for
we're
it.
struggling to try to get something to fit.
But it's, I mean, the way this is laid out, and I don't know which one's dog park 4 in the corner, I mean, I think there's a few different ways that it could be laid out where we've got better.
And so to your point as well, there are two more options in addition to this where they might be left, right, up, down.
Yeah, so I realize this is rough draft, so I'm just throwing out those concerns.
We've been
And that'll be the intent, obviously, of our open house on the 25th. So again, we just want to apprise you guys, again, so the intent of coming here to you guys today is we're going to have that open house.
Where we get input, so.
Get input from you, and also make sure that you guys are getting this before.
As far as the developer money, impact fees, etc., that's great. This is kind of stuff it's supposed to be for. But what other areas is we competing with those costs? Right? Is there a reason to spend this much in one spot, or are there other areas?
This is offset where we need more turf field and grass, which is higher maintenance issues for us. This is our side that people have this want this type of recreation.
Well, I'm actually even
Offsetting
thinking
that issue.
this is a whole system.
Yeah.
There's more places to put it. So just
We've had a lot of conversation too, even as council people, about pushing back with other entities about infrastructure. We're upset that we're making decisions before we have infrastructure that can handle it. So I think that, to Jared's point, that's an important key piece, that we make sure the infrastructure is gonna be compatible with these kind of uses. And I agree 100%. 150 parking stalls is nothing. If you're gonna have an amenity like this, and if like we think maybe it's the only one even close to us, that's gonna be a pretty big draw. And immediately we're gonna be out of parking spaces, and then so everybody that wants to use the dog park, sorry, we're having an event this week, you can't use it. You know, there's just gonna always be a problem with that if we don't make sure that infrastructure's in place before we move forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know as they've been working through all of this, I've been in their meetings, but it's always accessibility, the impacts around surrounding residents, and if you put it further up the city, or some other meetings further up the city, or further up in the city, that the residents will not like it. So this is a good draft of it,
For sure.
and now get that public input. We want your input, and it'll always come down to dollars, you know, and looking at what possibly return to the dollars are.
And then 2 points and then a question, and don't forget the economic draw of it, and then a point you made just in passing, Brett, that's very important though, is maintenance. You know, the cost of maintaining a large park of grass is very, very expensive. This is an option that provides a different kind of recreation, and the maintenance could potentially be much, much lower and easier on our staff as well.
Your city's trying to come back with you with options in the future on grass that we work with partners and we put more turf in, because the maintenance of grass is really hard to keep up with.
Well, and that was another question. I don't even know that cities can do this, John, but is there any option of, like on the circuit trail, is there an option of going out and somehow partnering or having a group sponsor, you know, like these mud runs or these other, can they sponsor a piece of equipment, and then this would be an area where their athletes could train? I mean, I would love to see us pursue some out-of-the-box thinking, because this is hot, and I don't think it's going away. I think people like to train naturally like this, and so where we can reach out and are legally allowed to do so, I would love to see us offset taxpayer dollar use for some private infusion, knowing that there's a nice partnership to be
To your
had
point,
here.
Nicole, we've actually done that with RSL, the concept. We're actually been looking at other partners throughout the city on some other ventures for recreation. And you're spot on with that. We're gonna look for those because, one, if they have a little bit of ownership, they'll help take care of it. But they will help us bring those draws to us like you see other cities do on recreation, especially St. George. They pack it in on different, I know baseball's going down there, soccer's going down there, and rugby's going down this weekend down in St. George.
I mean, you think about like the old X Games, the you know, how hot that was. I mean, I could see us creating something. I like the magnitude of it myself. I don't find it too busy because the magnitude and the expansiveness of it makes it such a draw and so different, and something that you could potentially partner with somebody who does have the ability to really make this a Utah draw, perhaps. So the scale of it I like very much, and then more importantly, I would love to have an infusion of money that's not our own for it.
we're excited because we actually know quite a few people from young to old that are into this type of sport / recreation nowadays. It's beyond my comprehension. I'm actually very impressed with how many people are into this type of stuff now. So it is, like I said, we love the input, and people are writing stuff down all over, and I know that you're taking notes. Please give us your feedback.
And my last question that I got sidetracked, and then I'll stop talking about this. On the open house, I would like to know briefly how you're presenting that, because it's one thing to just put up all of these lovely pictures, and they'll be like me, and I'd be like, yeah, tomorrow. So are you going to balance this out with the realities of what the potential cost might be, a timeline, some of those kind of,
That phasing thing.
well, the phasing idea, some of the practicality checks of just, we don't have an empty check to write for this, so, potentially the other elements that are fighting for the same dollar that this, it's the same discussion we always have. Public safety and then amenities like this. So the discussion, I guess, to my point, has to be practical as well as visionary. That's my hope. So maybe speak to that a little bit.
Okay. And we're still kind of fleshing through what that's going to look like. Being in Canyon, down in A, there'll be cookies.
Okay, I think there should be granola bars, frankly. Let's stick with the theming of this. I'm just
Rolled in dirt.
And rolled in dirt.
PR. You have a good job.
So I didn't mean to offend you, Brandon.
I'm all in.
I'm all in.
Protein.
If there's a chance to partner up with like Jordan Valley Water Conservancy, et cetera, for
Water wise.
What you said, dirt.
Good luck with that.
You had me
That's it. Yeah, there's gotta be some things like that.
Especially if you do the playground component,
Yeah,
the
they get
top
out
of the
there.
trailhead.
No, I mean, they can put up the branding and education.
In this type of environment, it works perfectly for this type of area.
I mean, it's not something you have to take up a lot of room for. It can be throughout the trail.
We want that more drought tolerant landscaping and less maintenance.
Any further comments or questions?
Is there a horse trail in this?
They have the multi-use trail, Brett, for you.
I was just joking.
Oh, okay.
So with that, we'll move on to item 3.2, discussion of proposed rezone of 22.87 acres located at or near 4950 west, 126 south from A1 to the Auto Mall Special District.
Okay, I think.
Oh, I
You
ran
want
away
to
from you, Mike, sorry.
All right.
Do you want the green? Probably just use that.
Okay. So this is not the last pieces that need to be rezoned to Auto Mall, but it's the next pieces that we're doing. They are privately owned by the Bowles family, their trust. There are two different zones, as the mayor just mentioned. It's approximately about 20 acres, the Auto Mall, and about 3 acres of the C2, that front on 126 South.
But we have it under contract.
Right. This is the pieces that we have previously rezoned for this project. And this is what we're anticipating when we completely rezone the area. You can see that we're working on or anticipating some future rezoning of the C2 on the west side of Main Street. And again, this is just a concept map that we've been sharing with the public as we've been talking about this rezoning project.
So I'm
Please.
just looking through the agenda for tonight on this. As we talk about it, it says we're going to A1, and I know in the packet it had both A1 and C2. In our motion, it has us just changing it to a C2 and not
to the AMSD.
AMSD. And I want to make sure that we're getting that correct.
Okay, that's,
That what exactly is the wording that
Yeah.
we need to do is correct.
so the motion probably just needs to be amended on your worksheet.
Okay, so before we go in there, we
Yeah,
want to make
I
sure we
can
get
get
the right
that
language
fixed.
for us.
Yeah,
so that we
I will
can
take care of that for
get
you.
that done correctly.
Yeah. We did have another open house community meeting on this, and we included at least one comment that was given to the city, a representative of DR Horton. Same concerns, just concerned about the intensity of the auto mall across the street from residential property. But we remind you, and we've been telling the community again, that we do have some very significant landscape buffers that are being planned for Harriman Main Street as it extends northward through this property. You can see on the west side, it's 28 feet of landscaping with a sidewalk, and then on the east, it's...
Was that a resident or was that a representative?
It's a representative for a developer, but we've also been hearing similar concerns from the residents.
So we have heard from
Yeah.
actual residents.
Yes.
Can I ask, speak to that?
Yes.
Have we, so I think it's a valid concern. It's always one that sadly we always hit on the outset. So when two differing uses come together, all of a sudden there's friction. What I'm suggesting is these are new units going up with D.R. Horton. So could we, and I think perhaps we should, prepare some sort of information sheet that shows who their neighbors potentially are going to be, and provide that to D.R. Horton to use, because then I feel like we're being proactive. So certainly D.R. Horton, I'm sure, is and could let the potential residents know about this, but I also think we're going the extra mile. I think it fits in with our kind of community facilitator program of it's a simple step, doesn't cost a lot of money. Give it to them and suggest that that's something they can give out to their materials that they give to potential homeowners. And then again, I think fixing a problem on the front end is going to be much easier than fixing it on the back end. If they know what they're buying, then that's just fair for all.
Any other questions or comments?
No, the same, have we received a large amount of public comments from residents? And I think the only ones I really heard were about, obviously that it sounds like, but more about lighting, and there's ways to kind of fix that,
We
right?
had more comments the last time we did this. This time we had, I think it was like 4 or 5 people that came to the community meeting. No one spoke in person before the planning commission during the public hearing. We just received that one. We had one inquiry just asking questions, and then the one email from D.R. Horton who was
So
opposed.
a little less, they're starting to
Yeah.
understand that's what's going there.
Right.
And again, as we move forward, we can still mitigate some of these lighting
Right.
concerns, right?
All right. Thank you, appreciate it. 23.3, discussion relating to an assortment of text amendments to the land development code.
I couldn't remember if this was right after. So as we've been living with our new zoning ordinance, we've been keeping a record of just little tiny things that are coming up that we recognize as just some minor amendments that we need to make. And so every now and then we'll bundle them up together and bring them to you for consideration. All of these, of course, have been reviewed by the Planning Commission and were recommended for approval. So for example, this first one, there was just an incorrect link. It wasn't to 10.12.8, but it should be to 10.12.7. So we're just making that correction. This one is kind of a reflection of a change in building code. For many, many years, the building code said that anything over 6 feet when it pertained to a fence or a wall needed a building permit. And our current code says the same thing. However, building code has actually now changed and is now 7 feet. So there was just a question of, well, maybe we should just simply rely on building code to regulate this and not have a duplicate information or reference in the zoning code. One reason why I think a lot of cities do this is actually pretty common to have this in the zoning code. It's a common place for people who are looking for information. They look in the zoning ordinance. They're looking for regulations relative to placement and height of fencing. And a lot of cities do want to try and communicate the fact that a building permit is required for a fence when you exceed a particular height. It was the recommendation of the commission that this be removed, but we could potentially just simply modify the reference to be consistent with building code and just simply say 7 feet. So either way, this was the recommendation from the Planning Commission.
Clint, since you were on the Planning Commission for so long, do you have any strong feelings one way or another?
I'm fine with the way it's recommended in there.
And the key requirement or reason for the building permit is just to ensure that whenever you have that additional height, you have additional wind loading. We want to make sure there is an adequate anchoring or foundation system for that type of a fence. Landscape screening, for whatever reason, this section of the code did not specifically include the C2 zone. But if you look at the rest of the chapter, there are multiple references that do include C2 zones, so it clearly was expected or anticipated that this would apply. So it's just a cleanup, just making sure that it's clear that the C2 zoning regulations are included in these landscaping requirements. I think as a matter of practice, Blake, you can maybe speak to this, is when we do grant a modification to our park strip standards and we allow a hardscape, I believe we've been, as a matter of practice, been doing colored stamped concrete, but it hasn't been in our ordinance, or the new ordinance. So we're just wanting to add back in that it is a colored decorative concrete.
Why? Sorry, curious.
When it's untreated, it's just that dull gray, right? And when you try to apply like a powder coat on top after the fact, it just doesn't wear well. And so to have it a colored material right from the beginning, when there are chips or things, it just is more durable as far as the treatment over time.
Because the color goes throughout the concrete as
Yeah.
opposed to just being a surface
Right.
treatment.
If it's just a surface and it pops, it looks like popcorn on top.
Right. And you're
Yeah.
it's just more aesthetically pleasing to have
Yeah.
the colors rather than it looks like one massive sidewalk.
Right,
without the-
right.
It'll tend to look like a big driveway,
Right.
because they'll
Yeah.
put it next to their driveway and then
Yeah.
it just, it's
Got
the
it.
whole thing.
A quick question on just concrete in general and park strips. I know back when I was on the planning commission, we had a pretty healthy debate a couple of times over, should we allow somebody to just do stamped concrete in there? And there's pros and cons always to everything. I happen to be one that's not, even though it's low maintenance and, you're not gonna have the bark and those other things that go away, I still think that all in all, if you just have all these park strips that are full of concrete and just the tree wells in them, for a tree here and there, then is it really serving the purpose that we want it to serve?
Yeah. I think this is actually a decent balance because there will always be some conditions when a request to doing a hardscape does seem to be appropriate. I think the baseline standard of having a planted park strip, I think that's a good place to start, but I think we do want to have some flexibility. And at this point in time, I think the comments from at least the planning commission were favorable to have the flexibility.
And I'm fine with having the flexibility. My only, question is if someone wants to do that, do we limit how much of their frontage that they can do in there? Because I didn't see that in there.
And I think that is reflected in other parts of the code. I don't believe we can do simply 100% hardscape, right, Blake?
I'll have to look.
I think it's a percentage, it's a ratio. But I'll follow up on that for you.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a good comment.
This actually came from our landscape architect as she's working with a procurement. For whatever reason, shrubs are not measured typically or purchased or sold by height. It's by the gallon container, the size of the container. And so she just flagged us saying we should correct that. So that's just more industry standard for the minimum size of a shrub. This one is a little more interesting. In the current C2 zone, you can have an 8-foot front yard setback. However, in our landscaping ordinance, it says that you need to have a 20-foot front yard that's fully landscaped when you're abutting a public street. There is also an opportunity to reduce that to 15 feet if you meet certain criteria. So staff flagged this and recommended that we just simply change the 8 feet to 20 feet to be more consistent with the landscaping ordinance. But it maybe didn't go quite far enough because the commission, again, has the opportunity of reducing that to 15 feet. And maybe there's even some areas where we want to try and bring a building closer to the street, which I think is what this was trying to anticipate, was 8 feet. So the proposal is just to bring some consistency between the two parts of our city code.
This is just in the C2.
Just in the C2, right? So we may want to, I could propose that this be 20 feet, but may be reduced to 15 feet if it meets this other section of the city code, because that is in the power of the city council or planning commission right now. But maybe over time, as our C2 zone matures, we may want to revisit this and maybe create a few other additional standards to it. But so again, this is just a matter of building consistency between the two parts of our ordinance. I believe this is the last one. Again, trying to create consistency between zoning and building. Typically, anything over 30 inches in the current building code is considered to be structure. And that is actually, our old ordinance said the same thing, but this new ordinance was amended to 3 feet. So we're just clarifying that that's actually 30 inches. Yeah. I don't know why 30 references in there twice. That's probably just a typo, but it's 2.5 feet or 30 inches. I think that was the last week.
Any comments or questions from council? Okay, we will move on to 3.4 stormwater user fee study follow-up discussion.
Yep. I didn't have the presentation for this.
Okay.
I sent out the report to the council, and hopefully you got it. It's a fun read. The executive summary was written very well, I thought. Told a lot of the story. So I was just following up with you from our last meeting to see if anything else came to mind, if you had any more input. Our open house is tomorrow night, and we're expecting a lot of people. Maybe 3 or 4, maybe 2, I don't know. But anyway, we'll be in the council chambers tomorrow night. We'll have some boards, we'll have a presentation rolling on the screen so they can see it. And it'll just be kind of a come and talk about it type of meeting. So, ready to answer any questions if you have.
Just one quick question, Blake. In the first part of it, it said that the proposed or recommended fee is between $6 and $7, right?
Mm-hmm.
But everything it looked like I saw really in the report really was at that $7 mark.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is it between 6 and 7, or is it really just 7? That we're
7
looking
will
at?
fully fund it.
We'll
If
fully
we
fund
go
it.
down below that, we'll have to figure out what we need to cut to make our program still operable.
Okay.
So,
As we've discussed this through the budget cycle, start to work through that and try to plan which way, we're not sure which way the council's gonna vote on this, but we're trying to find 2 different paths. If we go shorter, it means the council may have to come back to it sooner than later to raise the fee in the future, a sooner time. Or review it frequently, but the $7, we're very confident it won't have to be subsidized by general fund monies. The $6 might have to be in flux.
And what level does not have to be subsidized?
$7.
Oh, I thought you said it did, so you're saying at 7 we.
6 it has to,
7 it's paying for
7
itself.
It's
All right.
so to clarify, single-family homes will be 7, is what we're recommending. Townhomes are a little bit less than that.
Because they're not a full ERU.
They're not a full ERU. And then condominiums and condominiums will be a little bit less than that. Apartments will get charged like commercial units, where you go in and calculate the hardscape and figure out how many ERUs they are, and then they get charged for that. Churches, schools.
They typically have more impacts on storm drain.
So just philosophically, I am not supportive of charging under what would pay for the cost. That seems ridiculous to me to start out in an obvious hole and assume that it's going to get better. It's only gonna get worse. I mean, that's the problem we have with our roads. We're in a hole always with maintenance. So I would strongly support charging what in fact it does cost.
That philosophy is also very much backed up by talking to other cities and some of the other city engineers who have adopted lower fees, and now they can't get revisited back to the fee to raise it. And I think a lot of fees now would be right at that $7 to $12 range, but a lot of them are stuck at 4 and 5, and they're putting general fund dollars into their.
But yet there are some out there that are charging considerably more than that as well.
Yeah, and some considerably less, but their ERUs are different than ours too. It's
Yeah.
like if you look at Lehigh, it's really small, but it's because their ERUs are based on really small square footage, so it
Yeah, and
doesn't
I'm not
compare.
looking to make money, but I'm certainly not looking to lose money, because again, the ultimate loser is the citizen then, because we're scrambling money away from other things, so,
And that's what
I'm an 11
that's what we've been
users.
doing over the years, is everybody's been watching this for, it's been around for our concern. And past council wanted to wait and see what happened for our audit report. We got smacked pretty hard on our audit report, that we were a lot of deficiencies we need to pick up and do. If we do nothing and get on board with it, they're really gonna come after us. And we know that, and council's listened to that. But still, it's in your hands what you want us to do, we'll deal with whatever your decisions are. I know
Well, that's
it's
why
a tough
I'm-
situation for you to
it
push in,
is.
but it's finally come to it that they wanted to wait and see what the letter said, and, yeah, we got pretty good, strong language in that letter that we had to get into compliance for.
And the penalties are
They're
steep,
huge.
Steep, yeah.
so.
Well, and I don't think, I mean, we did a lot of study, we hired somebody that did a good job, and we paid them to come in and figure it out, so it seems silly to me to go, well, we're gonna do a little bit less and underfund it, and then come back next year and say, well, we need to increase it and increase it and increase it. As a citizen, I would just rather just have a fee and know what it is for the next few years, rather than have to, and this pushes out 5 years, as I recall, right?
5 years, and then we should revisit
Then
it.
we
It could
revisit
stay
it
the same, because our
Yeah.
growth looks like it will help us with that.
Yeah.
I mean, we should revisit all of our fees at least that often.
We should.
So,
And the
Well, this is
penalty
one of the
is-
things that our residents, again, it's probably, you hear stormwater and it's not the most exciting topic, I'm sure, to anyone in the world. But as soon as you start talking about another fee, well, that certainly is something that's gonna get somebody's attention. And half the time, people are mad just because of the word fee without understanding what the fee really does. And this is where we really need our residents to understand what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And so, you know, for those who are listening right now on Facebook, and I know we're doing we always do a lot of good communication, encourage people to come and actually understand what it is and why we have to do this, why we have to go down this road, because it's not just, oh, this sounds like a cool program, but we need the residents to pay for it. This is something that's, again, it's basically a mandate.
It is a mandate.
It's a state mandate, and it has to be funded one way or another. And to Nicole's point, we don't wanna have to pull funding away from the other priorities that we have in the city in order to fund this mandate that we have, but we wanna do it the right way without, again, overdoing it too, so. There's been a lot of work that's gone into this, and I'll echo what Nicole said. I would not be anywhere but other than supportive to fully fund the project, or the program where we need it to be in compliance.
yeah, I had that, comment, I think I made it last time we talked about this too, but just for public consumption again, at these meetings, I too get tired of seeing fees. It's like, it feels sneaky. It's like, why don't we have to go through truth and taxation? This is a tax. And then we discuss that, and it's because too many entities wouldn't pay into that who have a huge impact on the stormwater. So this is a way to recoup anybody who has
All users.
all users who have an impact on it would have to pay the fee versus
It means that
anybody
our
that's.
residents are not subsidizing
Yeah,
those other entities.
Exactly, anybody that's exempt from that through nonprofit would not have to pay these fees. So it's important that it is classified as a fee, but just as important that people understand it, that it's why it's happening.
And if we were to get fines, we'd still have to pay the fine and we'd still have to do the program.
Yeah.
So,
And the
Yeah,
fines
let's do
would
it
be,
before then.
the fines,
what are we looking at in the fines?
you'd be probably looking at all the way up to $1 million a day until you have.
$1 million a day until we're in compliance, and then we'd still have to do the program anyways. So this is by fiscally. it
So we could
makes-
last 1.5 days
Yeah.
Right.
Before we were.
in
I can
violation.
say this, politically, we pushed this as far as we probably dare, and if you dare to push it more, then
We don't dare.
there's an outcome coming your way that we'll have to figure that out if you do nothing.
It's foolish use of taxpayer
It'd
money
be
to
irresponsible for us.
turn our backs on
Yeah,
it,
we'll just pay fees, we'll pay a fine that won't serve anybody but the state.
Any further comments or questions by the council?
Yeah, just one, legal hasn't reviewed it yet, I haven't seen it, so.
I sent it to you, stick by the meetings.
Oh, okay. I got it.
That wasn't enough time, John?
Alright, we will move on to 3.5, Academy Village conceptual site plan.
All right, this is kind of exciting. We have the RSL Stadium, and it started to be kind of a magnet for a lot of sports things. And we've talked to you a little bit about the Stallions practice there, the Warriors practice and play there, and there's other groups that are coming in. We have college, we have Salt Lake Community College and others. And what's happened now is the Wasatch Group has bought additional 60 acres adjacent to this property. And they're calling it Academy Village to tie in with their school and the things going on there. And this area is part of the CDA that we have already going. And so when we did the CDA 10 years ago, we didn't know they were gonna do all this stuff. And so there's an opportunity to take advantage of the stadium, of the practice facility with the other entities. But we need to do some modifications to the RDAs and go back to some of our agencies and talk to them. But before we do that, I thought it'd be worthwhile to have John present what they're planning to do, and then go over the details of the changes that we need to make to the RDAs. So this is John Lindsley for the camera.
Hi guys.
With Wasatch.
I'd like to point out, Gordon, you only refer to this as kind of exciting.
Oh, kind of.
Yeah, it's kind of like going from storm drain, which is like talking about life insurance, to.
Oh, we're just gonna
set the
Sorry,
standard.
Baby steps.
Yeah,
Set the
I get
standard
it.
I love it.
low.
I
I
get it.
didn't rig the lineup here. So,
Sorry.
Anyways, Gordon is very accurate, with the exception of the acreage. We're about 43 total as we nail it down, but it gives you the idea and scope and size of what we're doing. So, just to walk through from the beginning, we're here in full transparency to work with the city to try to master plan a development, and that's kind of why we're wanting to get here early in a work meeting and go over this stuff with you. So here we are with the training facility. We're all familiar with this. We've been building out the homes out here in South Hills. We got the Soleil apartments out here. DAI's got a product out here. There's some homes that are going in here, some mid-cluster, I believe. And then these two purple squares are the two sections that we have acquired. Each of them are just under 25 acres, like I say. So that's a done deal. It's behind us, and we are now moving into concept. So now, in working with the city, we were designing this concept already. We've done many modifications throughout the few months while we've had our concept. But in our meetings, Gordon's raised some points that I think could be a potential win-win for the city and for Wasatch. Our uses align, and that falls within the sports mixed-use overlay zone that we've created out there. And so what we're thinking is, this is over here in this corner is where the training facility is. We know that there's a need for the two teams, the Warriors and the Stallions, for housing and for accommodations in office and in clubhouse facilities, weight rooms, showers, things of that nature. So we're already looking at doing some housing, which is very accommodable to that use. We're already looking at doing some office, which obviously is as well too. And we've got a clubhouse design, which fits the housing as well. So to us, we think, let's figure how we marry these two ideas together, because we're still going to accomplish the same thing. But in order to do that, there'll be some things that need to be discussed within the CDA, which is allowed and hasn't been allowed, and we're going to ask for, and things of that nature. So I'll get into it. Here, let's start with pod 35. Right here, the big box is what we're planning for, a space for a large grocer. We think that this area is in need of a grocer, especially as it gets built out. If we can't strike deals with grocers, we're also looking at possibly like an IMAX movie theater or something of that nature, which is a good draw from a medium-sized box area. This is parking structure. This is an office building that we're planning for about 30,000 square foot plate right now, possibly 5-story. We've talked with many people who are very interested. You all know the same people in the areas that are traveling for office. We can accommodate that through here. Retail along the front and along Academy Parkway, and then some mixed use type of residential and retail and office in here as well too. So coming down Academy Parkway, if you pull into pod 39, Real Vista Drive, if you pull into 39, we have a matching office building here. So your entrance, the way that they're positioned, is going to be very inviting. The buildings will be 2 levels roughly below grade already, so it's not going to seem like these great big skyscrapers. They'll still have roughly 5 stories, but they're going to be a moderate size. Great views from here. We're anticipating lots of glass, lots of visual effects from these offices. Underground parking, and then also using parking structure next door as well here.
John, are these the 2 pods that you were going to do some retaining on up against?
Yes.
Mountain View to help increase that buildable footprint there?
That is accurate. So with that regard, along the edges here are where we're looking at obtaining that land back and hopefully being able to push some of these to create some more space for density in the commercial world here.
So here is a hotel, which obviously we've got positioned where it's close to the training facility. We want to create a nice walkway, pathway, possibly golf cart shuttles, something of that nature to be able to get our patrons that we anticipate fully occupying our own hotel, but in off seasons and in between events will still be available obviously to the public and so forth. This is the rec center that I had mentioned, clubhouse. This is a residential area. We're anticipating approximately 120 units possibly in there, more on the high density, but more for club and sports type of team collaborations. There'll be a retail along here. This would be positioned as a gas station. This would be positioned as a pharmacy so that the corners are ideal from a retail perspective. And then we have a bank here that we've already talked about that wants to go in. We've got another retail position here, and then within the center is going to be retail and split office. So it's taken us a while to do this, and the reason why is because the topo on this property drops roughly 40 feet from top to bottom, and it's hard, as we figured out doing the training facility, to create great big large flat spots on this sloping ground. So we've been able to do that to where we'll step down here in the middle of both, and we'll step down here as well too, but you'll be able to drive in, connect to a one-way loop throughout here and exit, and so you keep peeling off into the section that you want to get into. We've seen it done in master plans of other similar projects, and it seems to be the solution when you have this kind of an issue. This other one on Pod 35 would essentially have the same type of flowing loop as well too. We're designing how to get large trucks to the grocer to where they can pull in, still do deliveries, still come out, hit that loop, and still be able to exit. So we've done a lot. We've worked with our traffic engineers. We originally wanted more of an access point, but we think this would be the only signalized intersection so that we don't have backup too close to either one of these ports of entry for either roadways. We think it flows well. You got Salt Lake Community College over here. We're talking about a lot of good walkability to the retail products here, coffee shops, you know, and so forth, that you'll want to anticipate a lot of foot traffic when we come in here. We are still working on the effort of trying to influence the direction of tracks so that hopefully we can get a track stop out here. So I think
How's that conversation going?
it's always a tough one.
Okay, but I appreciate the advocacy for it because we absolutely do need mass transit. And so you're showing this need in terms of events and gathering is helpful. And please know we're having the similar conversations as well, given our density and things like that.
Well, we appreciate your support as well. We feel that not to serve our own purposes of what we're building out here, but there is a large mass of people that are starting to show up around a time that is needed for mass transit. And it's just going to grow. And when we start positioning the people over in Salt Lake Community College, and then when there's an event of a 5,000 seat stadium, and when you've got high density down here, 600 units, and you've got the homes being built, and then you got this part, this is comparable to like a center cow down the street. So when you start thinking about it, there's not much opportunity for transit out in this area. And so if you look at the current plans, it makes a ton of sense to run it down here and continue on down through into the southern region. So I think it makes a lot of sense, and we're an advocate, and we appreciate your guys' support as well.
Yeah. However we can dovetail those efforts to have conversations, that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yes.
Another question, you talked a little bit about the hotel there and the use primarily for, I guess, kind of your uses as far as traveling, visiting teams, those types of things.
Yeah.
Two questions for you. First, any idea where those teams are actually staying now when they come into town? Because obviously you're
Not in Harriman.
not in Harriman, absolutely.
Nowhere.
Probably not very close
You
either.
say it, but it's one of our hotels that's not in Harriman, but we want them to be in Harriman. So as you can see, even, you know, we're getting the use right now in a related project, which is down along Bangater. That's one of our projects, but we need it here, and we want to support the local economy here.
My second question to that is based on some of the other things I'm hearing, is one hotel pad enough?
It's a pretty large hotel. I think we have 120 doors.
It's pretty good size.
So, yeah, it's you're right. There's always going to be needs, but it's going to be a growing need as well too.
Absolutely. So, 2 or 3 story hotel.
For us, for us to build 2 might be an overkill on our use, and so from a development standpoint, your time value may dwindle down a little bit. So over time, in the next say 5 years, you might have another need for another hotel.
Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
Do you think of 2 or 3 story hotel?
It's gonna be at least two.
Let me, go back to the tracks thing. Deloy with, John set up a meeting about a month ago with Carlton Christensen, who's the new chair of UTA. And we met with them and explained this project and the whole thing about a month ago. So now we're scheduling some additional meetings that Wasatch is also participating in. So we're doing some other things that we'll talk to you more about.
Yeah, there's good conversations along that. It is a political, tricky maneuver and to realign any future plans, but I believe we're in a good position to be able to further those discussions, so.
Gordon, I'd just say is, you know, from obviously having the opportunity to sit on the advisory board there, if there's an opportunity or some value in me being part of those conversations, please let me know. Please let me know.
Just a clarification real quick, just because I know if somebody hears, they might think that you said meant something different than what you did. You mentioned the word with the berms and doing the, the leveling of the ground, that it was for density. You said commercial density, not resident. You're not getting apartments just because you moved that. And I know that's the case.
That's a hot button, yes.
But it's a hot button.
Right.
I don't want our residents to think that all of a sudden you're getting some sort of extra density here because you made some changes to some landscaping.
Correct.
That density you're referring to is we're trying to maximize the commercial and office space that we have there so that we can get the most economic benefit possible for our community. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that so we didn't get miscommunication to our residents.
I mean, I'll toot our horn a little bit, and it's more about our principles of our company is we recognize the need in Harriman to bring in more commercial and retail. The tax base needs to be increased so that your tax values and your property taxes start to drop because there's a lot of rooftops. That's the bottom line. So we're showing that here's a project that can be solidified by the use to help to better the community. And if we couldn't see that along with our own intentions, our own uses, we wouldn't be doing the project. If this was overdeveloped in one side or the other, we wouldn't be putting it forward because we believe in strong communities, so.
Yeah, I like the topo is sometimes a challenge, right? But sometimes when you talk about going down different levels, it adds a really unique component to it. I even think about like the outlets of Park City, you have to go up to the next level and stuff like that. And sometimes it just adds like some unique, you know.
Yeah,
that's character.
Look, yeah, adds a lot of character to it.
Yep. If you notice, they have the one-way traffic that goes all the way down the road too. So
you have to drive by all the stores. Shucks.
Yeah, you know, it's strange, right?
But sometimes it does add character, and it makes it look better than just big old flat parking lot with a bunch of stores. So
absolutely.
I think you have an opportunity for that.
Yep. We're trying to stay on the cutting edge of technology. We understand that we're going to need to have an Uber set up out here as well too. So we look at positioning something from an Uber ride pickup. So if you come to a game and you want to ride Uber, you can come here, you can stop, grab food, and go right to the game. So the flow has been well thought out, and this isn't the final concept, but we're getting real close. The sculpture is getting visible right now. So we feel pretty confident of what we have, and we want to share that and get your feedback and understand, but then also highlight some of the I guess, hurdles that we're going to need to jump in order to address things like the CDA and the residential. So this area over here right now is currently zoned, as we purchased it, mixed-use residential. So it has the entitlement, but what we are lacking is the involvement of the CDA because the residential has already been placed in density through other properties that have been sold within the CDA. So technically we ran out of residential, but we feel a strong tie to these two teams that are needing to be housed here next to the training facility. And since our zoning's already there, we feel that it would be a solid ask to come in and address that issue. The other issue that we're going to talk about is here with tracks, with Salt Lake Community College, with more commercial retail across the street from our 5,000 seat stadium, we know that parking is going to be tough out here. And the only way for us to overcome these hurdles based on our experience is parking structures. So usually we try to come and help get support from the city to build that because we don't want to run it private and have to charge people $5-10 to come park. It's not a moneymaker. It'll help offset some of the parking needs here, but it will help create the density, as you mentioned, Mayor, about the commercial here. We want to try to create as much tax revenue as possible. The way we do that is not having over parked for surface parking and have attributable parking and parking structures. So typical cost that we see on this is roughly about $18,000 a stall. We're looking roughly about 250 stalls per parking structure. So about 4.5 for each one. That's what we're looking at.
they're doing some clever things here, if you look at it. One of the things they're doing is they're building this into the retaining wall. So, so that saves them some cost. They're also putting these in areas strategically, so if people want to park here, being a public, to go to the game, they necessarily have to walk past every restaurant and every store along the way. So they're doing a few things like that.
Also to give some steps on their Fitbit.
And the Fitbit. But it also,
We're a health conscious community.
it also allows them opportunities to do some team events there. So whether to meet players, to participate, to have a sports elemented events in there is kind of what they're looking to do. So.
John, you've invited me to meet with your design team, Babcock Architects, and this is a very design-rich project. It doesn't really come through in this site plan, but.
Click to the next
No,
slide.
yeah, let me walk through
Okay.
it since we've got a few visual effects here. I mean, the size and scope of this project on a piece of paper doesn't really give it much justice, but if you can throw some 3D elements to it, you can see this is the size of this type of a project. Now, we're not in any sort of competition with CenterCal. We're looking for a different tenant base. We don't feel that it's going to serve Harriman well to try to go after the same tenants as CenterCal, right? So for us, we're looking at a much different tenant base. But with that, office, we want professional office. Let's maximize these buildings. Let's maximize what we can achieve here. And there's a lot of like dental offices and sports therapy, right? It's a great area for sports therapy. Nicole?
So in terms of retailers that you're looking at, are you looking for a certain type of feel? Are you looking for more national types of retailers? Not giving away your plan necessarily, but national type of retailers or more boutique style that are sort of one-ofs? I mean, have you put in thought that?
Yeah, so we spent some time at the Vegas convention for the ICSC, and we talked to a lot of different people about interest levels. And there was a time where we thought that we would be carving off some properties and just selling them to the highest bidder, sort of speaking, selling off the high value corners, so to help fund the project overall. We've gone away from that, where we're going to own and lease the entire thing. So now it's like similar to an HOA, right?
Yeah.
We want to make sure that our tenant base is cohesive. And that's the only way that we're gonna be able to lease this up. There will be a mixture of some national, but we also wanna welcome some local and, regional type of retailers.
So what I love about that is just your philosophy. I feel like you're coming into Harriman as a partner, almost as a resident yourself. So I mean, just to pass that along to Deloy, the fact that I feel like you're looking to not just make a profit as a developer, you're really looking to enhance our community and the entire Southwest. So I thank you for that. I think it's a great approach, and we're happy to have you as a partner.
Appreciate that recognition. You're absolutely right. We've got sizable interest out in this area. We're not looking for just the enter, maximize yield, and take out. We're there for the long haul. So.
What I like about it is playing off the stadium, not ignoring it, but making it really interactive, and I think that's really gonna be a draw to everything so the two.
Not even just the stadium, but even the college that will be next to it, because all those kids have the opportunity to come to that. It's so awesome.
Yes.
And
study points, Wi-Fi, go over there, sit in the coffee shop, study. I mean, it's a feel is what we're looking for.
Yeah, awesome.
So here's the two issues for you. The first is, we would need to go back to some of our park taxing entities and adjust some of our contracts, because they have a maximum cap. Interlocals. They're not contracted with the other people, they're called interlocals. So we're coming to you to say, give us direction to go back and start the process to amend the interlocals. The second thing we're asking you to do is we would amend the CDA to include helping to participate with the parking structures. The parking structures are extremely expensive. You usually see public participation in those facilities. But the idea of really eliminating the sprawl of asphalt, while we can't make it attractive, it's best to have less of it. So we're thinking to make it more walkable.
We would fund that through the CDA.
We'd fund portions of it to them, and so that would make this project, that's the two components that we're looking to do. Go ahead.
Oh, you didn't need to stop midstream.
I'm done.
But we can also,
Just in queue,
when
right?
I know, exactly, I'm just getting in the queue. when you're going back to these entities, yes, there'll be more residential, which is typically not looked upon favorably, but we can also tell the story of the job creation, which I assume is also part of this and what we can mention, because in terms of what the county and the state are looking at for these types of things, it is in fact job creation, of which we have very little out here. So I'm hopeful, and I guess I'm asking a question somewhere in the midst of me just uttering about, can we tell the story of the additional elements that they're bringing above housing, which is, you know, the event, the destination, and then of course the jobs.
So the two big entities, of course, are the county and the school district. We jumped the gun a little bit and went to the school district already, and we feel like we're in a good place to continue this discussion. And
So this is a forgiveness conversation, not a permission?
Well, we don't need to talk through all the details. We need your permission to do this, and then we're going to meet with the county. We have some opportunities, like you said. This, I may have undersold this, but this is a spectacular element that's going to be in the county, in the city, that everybody's going to want to make sure this
Kind of
happens.
exciting to spectacular.
I didn't want to.
Now we're there, baby steps.
Well, that's my point, that's my point. You're
This is
making,
better
you're
than what I'm
making a
suggesting
number
at this
one,
point.
and you're saying additional residential. What I'm saying is, that doesn't even come close to telling the story
The story.
of what we're bringing. So
No,
that's what I'm
that's right.
saying, there's all of these other elements, because again, this is not what it is.
Right.
There's so much more than that.
They will never see this light.
Okay.
But it's targeted residential too, really, it's not just
Yeah.
building
That's
houses,
a
this is
good
for
point.
It's
a purpose
athletes.
for let these
So-
athletes have a place.
That's on number 2 here with the parking structure. I don't have any problem with that. Next to an office building, using the funds from the location to help pay for the parking for location, whatever. I don't have a problem with that. The residential, apartments are obviously, as you know, a big deal to our residents, and they've been vocal many times about that. And so, while I don't necessarily think that it's a bad idea to do it here because of specifically what we're saying. This is so that the teams can come and have their players here and have somewhere for them to stay. This isn't necessarily just going to be any Joe Schmo off the street is going to be getting a hotel. I think that needs to be part of the discussion as we go through, so that when we are going back and justifying that to our residents of, well, we had this plan, now they want more. Why are we giving them more? Well, it's because of this very specific reason, where this is for the athletes that are playing here, that you want in your community, you want to have this. This is something that we all have agreed we want. And so I just want to make sure that's clear, both within the discussion, but in the CDA as we're making the adjustments, that the intent and the scope of what that is very clarified as the justification for why we're adding, however many apartment units to this project over what was already approved years ago. And I'm willing to look at that and have that discussion, and I think we'll get there just fine. I just want to make sure that, for me, that it's clear that it needs to be very clear what that is, and that we're having that put into writing, so that we don't, we're not getting something different. And you guys have always been great about giving us what you promise, but we've been burned a lot of times by other people.
And I want to just go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, and it's important for people to know too, this is an increase on the CDA, not on a development agreement with the developer. This is new property, new things coming in there. This is simply an increase on the CDA, not.
This doesn't change development.
Exactly.
And we have a park we'd like you to.
Have some thoughts on it.
Okay, all right.
I might have some questions. We'll talk. Do you have,
Yeah, we'll talk.
obviously you've started to do some discussions already. How does this materially change the current CDA that's in place?
So I wanted to make sure this would be successful with our entities before we started, because I hate taking you something and then it doesn't work. That's why we jumped the gun a little bit.
We're okay with that, It's just a chance to get better.
Yeah, it's just to get better. So what the issue really is we would be looking at actually increasing the amount of participation with the other entities, because the existing funds are being used for the roads and the things we already have. So we'll be increasing this, and this new increase would be specifically for parking structures.
How
And
much on the increase?
I don't know yet. We're going to be working with him on numbers. So we'll come back with all the details. On the apartments, I want to just talk about that a little bit. On the RSL property, they built 45 units of apartments for the athletes and it's iconic, so I think it's kind of cool.
For the school.
Yeah, for the school athletes, and so now we're talking the next level, because what they do is these students are now gonna get to play for the Monarchs, and now when the Monarchs play, those are gonna get to play for Real, and so you end up with this opportunity to see people stay in our community that are, you know, that are going through this process, that I think is really cool to have that, you know, that structure there, and not just them, but the football and the rugby and all those teams. It's kind of a really interesting dynamics that we can create there that is unlike anything else we'll ever see. So.
Now, what legislation ran this session dealing with parking structures? Was there
Wasn't that for,
I'm sorry?
wasn't that for the canyons?
I
So
don't
they
know,
could
I
do
just,
the-
I
Yeah,
was
I'll
just
tell
asking a
you-
question, if there was any legislation for parking structures.
Conwood
There
Canyon.
is some for Colin Heights, that gravel pit area to do parking structure for the cans, what the mayor's referred to, and that was gaining some traction, cause that, to be able to park there and get up the canyon on the mass transit.
They also use the Port of Preservation to fund some of that, and also to fund parking for Utah Jazz.
Yeah,
So
Colin
we
Heights
are
also
going
got
to
Yeah,
get
so
parking.
luckily,
Structure on that money.
luckily, because I completely agree that a parking structure is where we want to go in versus flat parking, absolutely. Mayor Dolan used to just wish that they had the money and the foresight to go up rather than out, so that we can do that now at an early point in our, community is fantastic. So with that said, and I'm noticing there's more opportunities as people realize that for other types of funding to help all of us come together and make that happen. So I'm sure you're on top of all of that.
We'll meet whatever gap we're getting to make sure that, I am a big proponent of getting these parking structures. Mike signed me up for some conference about don't have so much parking in your city, and it beats me up on that. So we're going to accommodate, agree with him this one time and get this done, so.
Well, good, I'm supportive, if you're wanting nods, I'm completely supportive of moving forward.
All right, we'll be bringing back some proposed changes. We'll be meeting with there's some noticing that John's gonna tell me. We're gonna send out some letters. Then we're gonna put some things in the newspaper with Jackie. We're gonna do a whole bunch of things. And then we're going to do our stuff, and then we'll be back with new agreements with each of the entities.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Okay, all right. With that, we'll move on to city manager updates. We've got a few minutes before our meeting.
Yeah, we'll probably have to split this into two groups. I don't see us getting through all of it, because some are lengthy reports. I'll get through some of the interesting points. Yeah.
Gordon wants
And some of the things, reports you want, so I wanna make sure we have plenty of time. Because the city council has continued to fund, spring and fall cleanup, I just wanted to pass you out the flyer that's coming up right away of locations and dates. The council to push that out in your own Facebook account. I do wanna thank the council for having the foresight of supporting this, because it encourages our residents to clean up their yards, clean up their houses, and get their refuse, hauled off. Not every city out of the 248 in this state do this, by the way. It's rare, actually, in reality. It's probably less than 10%. So when you think about that, I hope the residents appreciate that you spend their dollars to put back with them so they can help clean up their yards in our community. So good on you. I think it's a great program. It's been very successful. We'll get a report on how many tons we haul off every year to the dump, which is good. It means it's not in the backyards and garages and those type of things. And some of it's just a lot of green waste, so it's
Further
perfect
west.
timing.
We need to go further west.
Further west. You hear that? Okay.
We're looking at it.
Thank you.
It's really having a place where we can do it, it's safe, and
You're right.
we have to compact a little bit. So we
Stay
get
out
the
of
most-
my cul-de-sac, and Dave wants me to throw
Oh, you
stuff
want it in
away.
your cul-de-sac, I see.
Then we
That's
start having
exactly why I
conversations
needed it.
about throw stuff away.
That's exactly why I needed
Stay out
it
of my
in
circle.
mine.
Wasatch Front Waste and Recycle runs a program too with the traders, but the problem I've heard from the residents is they'll fill up so fast and they're gone the next day. Your program runs the whole week at that location, and as fast as they fill up, we haul them off. And it goes that whole week, so it's
Because
very,
they do fill up quickly, I mean, it's a
They do.
popular program.
that's a popular program, and so is the one you provide too. In reality, you get it off your whole reality.
Yeah, but Wasatch Front's building
Uh,
really fast.
Another thing is, want to update you, and I think Travis already did, but part of our transitioning, make sure we're providing all the needs of our employees and actually not someone I'm gonna say it's gonna benefit our residents. How many of you familiar, as council, familiar with QPR training? One? Great. So a lot in the last year, it's been a lot of emphasis put in our community and surrounding communities about suicide prevention and what we can do to help. Tammy and I have gone to several meetings and listened to many people, and there's a program out there called QPR, question, respond, and refer. So, did I get that right?
Refer. Is it refer? Refer. That's right.
Yeah. Okay,
Say that
so
again?
I'll get it right.
What was it again?
Question,
You're gonna challenge me,
persuade,
aren't you, Sarge?
refer.
Oh, it was a legitimate question.
Yeah.
Yes. Keep going. Downers.
Question, persuade, and refer,
Thank
okay? I would think for a minute, just calm down, right? With you, this is just supporting CPR training, and we pushed it out with all of our managing directors. They took the course about last month, I think it was, in our, we call it We Are Harriman meeting, when we bring them all together to think about what we are. And we started to push it out through the coordinators, and then we're moving it down through our employee staff. I got to attend today. We have our own in-house training trainers, went through that program, so we're teaching and training in-house. When I get to visit with our employees and with you all, we're all having to deal with these issues. Either it's a friend or it's family members that are struggling mentally with issues, anxiety. This is how it comes about. So well, let you know, we pushed out, and we're gonna go a few steps further. We're gonna involve Healthy Harriman, and then Monty is excited and agrees that he's gonna add it part of the end of the CERT training. So it's gonna be a tag team on the end of that with Healthy Harriman, as we invite our residents when they go for CERT training, they'll get this at the end of it. / they'll also get, if we'll hold just the QPR trainings for our residents in the future. I feel strongly about this. It's been a proven good program. Already, it makes people recognize, wow, I didn't realize that we have issues going on in our family. And as we always coach and preach around here, Harriman, we're all family here. Our culture is that, whether it be our employees and our residents. And that's why we like to take the philosophy that this is our family, we're gonna take care of it. So, very exciting. And with that, also, I'd like to update the council, hand this out to you because, you know, you are a council member, you are part of our benefits package. We've added another layer of counseling, so if you recognize someone that's dealing with issues in your household, it's, they don't take names. You can call and say, I'm with Harriman City, and they'll schedule an appointment for you or your spouse or your kids or those people who are living with you, and get them some help that they may need that's beyond your ability to reconcile with that person you care about. So it's been a great program. It's been used by a lot of our employees already. And I want to thank you again for
But to be clear,
funding this.
that information we don't find out which employees it's been used by, correct?
I said that all we get is a number count. But you have to tell them that you're Harriman. Our report only gives us a number count. We pay a flat fee no matter how many people we spend it for the year. This is part of, I think we talked about it the first time with you when we onboarded our police department, because they go through some particular issues that they need more counseling. Not to say, but you know, we know the environments they go through, and they need it. But our other employees need it too as well. So I know Jose, right? He's smiling over there. Yeah, oh yeah, we do. But, you know, these are two programs, QPR and this for your employees and our family members here. So very exciting to tell you about it. It's a sensitive issue, both of them are, but we want to make sure people are getting the right help when they need it. So
That's great.
me and Tam will continue to go to as many suicide prevention meetings as we hear about, to stay involved with that, so the city can be supported in those programs. We're not going to run the program, we will help run the QPR. That's been highly successful in our surrounding neighbors.
Are we partnering at all with the school?
We are partnering to find out what, you know, that's a delicate situation. Everyone wants to blame the school for the problem, everyone wants to blame the government for the problem. It's all of our problem, it's a community problem.
That's what
That's how we're
for a
voicing it.
partnering approach.
We're partnering together as a community effort, a community problem, help each other out. Yep.
Great. Well, and I mean, the point is that we're having conversations, and that's
Yes.
really how this starts, is people
Have you
being
gone to
willing
the training already?
to talk about
To
it.
start
Did I
the
get it right?
conversation is
Yeah.
the most important thing.
People are talking
Question,
about it.
ask question, and get to a place you can have a conversation.
Because it seems like so often you hear them say, I just had no idea. So just talking, that, so I applaud what you're doing, I'm fully supportive, and I'm looking forward to being a part of it.
Yeah,
And,
it's a way-
everybody knows Teddy Hodges in our community, he's really running with this, we're very proud of him leading out on this, he's involved in every meeting we go to.
That's great,
And,
good for him.
we like that in community engagement, he's all in with it.
I was just gonna say that I just think it's important because I think a lot of times people do sometimes turn to government or people and say, fix this, and this is not a government fixed problem. This is a way that we can help facilitate those conversations and facilitate society to fix the problems because this is a societal problem and government does not fix these things.
We
But
can help.
we can facilitate
Support.
and support, yeah.
That's where we're at, thank you, Sherry, and
Be
anybody
part of the
that's interested, if you wanna become a trainer, as we go through Healthy Harriman, we're gonna add more trainers on, from a volunteer base, cause we don't, I don't know, what's wrong with that. Anyway, but we'll do what we have to do to make sure these programs get pushed out. CERT program has actually been gaining more momentum, and I applaud, Monty with those efforts. We've been paying attention, we've been having a lot of success with that. We had that earthquake preparedness, about a week ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was last week. And then
That we had here, the news came out and filmed that, because of the minor earthquakes we've been having, it's perfect timing for that. So, okay, I'm getting my things off on this first, then we'll go to
Good,
Well,
good, thank you.
one of the good updates that I can update you on, we talked last council meeting about our wonderful bad border job at Chip Seal. And, one of these guys, Monty or Justin, just informed me that we're scheduled to restrike next week, so we're still staying on it, we're being proactive, trying to get on top of that. Weather like today has been weird this year, right?
So we're scheduled to restrike.
Yep. Not Chip or Seal.
But we haven't got through that.
When we got good weather.
But we're working on at least a plan to address that.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. We're looking at the most effective, best plan and not just a Band-Aid plan.
Thank you.
I'm happy to talk to you.
Tammy wanted to talk about, federal legislative update, and before she starts, I do have an update for you. I got to visit with Nicole a little bit today, and some things in dynamics have been changing back in Washington. We all know that, right? And usually we like to go back with a bigger contingency group of people to be more effective. We have to divide up to help bring some federal dollars back to our community. It's kind of gotten fragmented, and so I suggested, in talking with Nicole, we feel like strongly that this year, because of what fragmentation, it'd be better off we save the city dollars and not go. So we're already canceling our reservations and stuff. And she totally was on board. She says, yeah, if we're not gonna be effective, help bring back dollars to our community, then let's downsize it. So appreciate your support, Nicole. But Clint and Tammy and Gordon and the chief will still be going. And there is probably, hopefully some makeup money to keep buying the mountain. And we got a lot of meetings planned for the chief to bring back some grant money for.
No pressure,
police
I'll
department.
just.
So those are gonna be the most, and we got some EPA.
There is pressure.
Yes, and EPA meetings can be really boring, so that's why Gordon's going.
We wrote you a
That's
check
boring
and
stuff.
He's on the.
Right? We'll go do our best.
Okay, Tammy, you wanna finish up with the federal, let's
Yeah, those pictures. So, this really isn't even an update, it's just, Ben McAdams is obviously new back there, and when they're new, they don't really have a lot of decor in their offices, and so it's usually nice the first year you visit them to take them a picture, that represents your city. So I have 3 pictures here that I thought maybe we could get some, opinions on, of which one to, have framed that would represent Harriman. So this one is the first one. This is the Cove, obviously. It's a good
Is he a
picture.
soccer fan or a baseball
He has kids that play soccer, but he goes to the baseball games. So I
Oh.
think he's well rounded.
fan? Just, I
Um,
like that one.
This one's hard to see, but you can usually see oh, you know what, he sent me the wrong one. But
Christmas tree and.
the other one just doesn't have the snow on the ground. You see the water, actually. But, and then, there's this one that's looking out.
Is it wrong to suggest we send them a picture that has Olympia Hills in the background? Is that wrong? That's probably wrong. Do we not have any options with Harriman City Hall?
So we do. So we
Okay.
have one that we kind of use on a lot. I don't think it's in this, but we have the one that's got it's the opposite view, so it's looking at City Hall. So you see the park, you see where it says Jalen Crane, and then it's got City Hall.
That's my vote.
Okay.
Yes.
Once I heard Jalen Crane, that's my vote.
But that wasn't any of the.
No, but that's my vote. And you said the other one.
Yeah, I've seen some cool ones, the architects have some cool ones too, that help design those.
Because we can do one of City Hall. We just didn't know if you guys would want City Hall or if you'd want landscape. So
We wanna
we
remind
can
them
do
we are here.
who we are.
A picture one of the next question.
I'm not aesthetically capable enough to make a decision,
So we pull that
I
up,
will
we-
leave that to our wonderful staff. Maybe we could just call him up and be like, hey, which one do you
I mean,
want?
he's getting a book, so we had a book created with pictures of Harriman. It's a whole book. It's got tons of pictures in it. It goes through all of the services we provide. It has pictures of police and fire. So all of them will get that no matter what. But where he's new, it's just usually nice to give
And
them a
those have been
picture
back
to
there,
hang on their
they put
wall.
those books out on their coffee table
Do they
arrangements, so
have-
people fun through them all the time when they're there, so it'll be good.
That books just look fantastic. Well done.
Another thing I have is since Nicole decided to want to stick behind, we actually talked to you before about canceling the March 27th council meeting, because we didn't want to do over the air like we did last year, which was kind of poor taste. Only one will be gone is Clint. And so I'm looking for a nod if we want to go ahead and have a council meeting that night, 27th.
And the options are having one and not having one. Just to be clear, those are the options.
I'm wondering what,
It's having one without Clint or not having one without Clint.
And again, the choices I'm hearing are having a meeting or family time.
To recap,
So let me-
Netflix
let me
time.
throw
I'm
this
hearing,
out
these
at
are the
you,
kinds
too.
of things I'm hearing.
Because of Utah Legacy in Towns is the second council meeting in April, and we have quite a few involved with that. We will not have a quorum here, so that meeting is going to be canceled. The second one in April, that will be what, the 24th? I think if I think off the top of my head.
I just think the
One this
meeting
month,
is.
one next month, probably won't do it, so I'm just saying.
that was my question was, are we gonna have enough time to accomplish what we need to accomplish with the number of meetings? we're
I
going to
feel
do?
like, sure.
Okay.
I feel pretty confident that we can handle it. And it's always
Probably
best when
can't
Clint's
handle
here,
it.
so
Let's
I'm
be
voting
prepared
for a
the
cancel.
April 13th meeting, it'll be busy.
It's okay. This
The
is good.
13th is 14th.
Are you feeling like the agenda's gonna be too packed?
Listen, tonight we're going home early, that's all I care about.
No, all right, fine. Do we have enough agenda items to warrant 2 meetings?
We will have a little bit heavier load, but you guys are tough and you probably deserve a break.
But do we have any deadlines that we need to
That's
meet
my
or
question.
If
anything
something
that we're
comes up,
taking out?
we'll talk about it in the next couple of days.
All
If
right.
you see some
And
deadlines.
I might have something
We'll let you
that's
know.
in
Right now,
the works
you go
right
ahead.
now. It depends on if I have to get a resolution passed right away, but we don't know the
If-
outcome to that.
Yeah,
John
if we
doesn't
have
know yet,
something
so.
that, where we have to have it, or we need, it doesn't even have to be if there is something that, I don't wanna stop progress with the
Right.
city, so if we need to have one, I'm fine.
I
Yeah.
definitely don't need to
I
have.
don't wanna have a meeting just to have a meeting,
Yeah.
cause even though the one meeting might be longer, that's one less that staff has to come to also.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we like seeing you though.
yeah, we like seeing you too, but we
We
can
kind of
always
suggest
log in.
maybe every week. we-
I like just being an excuse for Nicole to argue about that.
We feel incomplete
You know,
without
what-
Clint.
Yeah.
Honestly, for the public record, I'll be honest with you, the public doesn't understand how much your team here and how much you spend away from your home. It's just not this council night, and that's why the impacts are so big, that people don't understand that you really don't have a life when you become an elected official. Or when you were in this level with the city, so.
But the pay's good, and Make a lot of friends.
So what,
Make
what,
a lot of
what
friends.
I just heard is I get to be gone for a week, so you guys get a night off.
That's not what I heard.
So we will look at just keeping that off for now and just.
You will get a bill from my wife.
Yeah, there's something coming up that's, we need to come
Other things we have coming up on CM updates, which we, Sherry's asked for a Houston update in Gina Road, that's coming up, which is gonna be lengthy. Senate 300 West update from Blake, review the quarterly annual services report. The only thing, I think Gordon wanted to talk about Olympia.
Do we have anyone there tonight?
Jerry.
I'm trying to,
That's where
We also have one staff.
that's where Jared left.
Ray.
That's where he's at. In fact, I just got a text from someone there, and this is, well, Clint, you must not have cats, because Clint's here. I said, no, that's Jared. I really don't know what you look like.
Even better.
They said the handsome one's there.
Well, and hopefully future meetings, won't be held on our city council nights and at
In
our
our
city
city.
council times, cause we
I just-
certainly love to support those.
And that's why Jared was torn, because he's, very involved with the development out that way and working with, people who live out that.
I just felt bad that somebody just insulted him and called him Clint.
You might send him a call.
Poor guy.
So I just wonder,
We've got a flyer
And
for
there's
him.
a meeting tomorrow as well.
there's a meeting tomorrow in South Jordan, what's the name of the elementary that's out tomorrow in South
Is
It
Jordan?
would
Bastion?
just been nice if that would have
Tonight's
been.
job.
Oh, Bastion's
We'd have
tonight.
loved that to be flipped, and the South Jordan could have been today and Cameron tomorrow.
Yeah, yes.
Gordon, is there anything more you want to say?
All I wanted to
about
just
Olympia?
mention is we're having that meeting tonight and then tomorrow, we'll try to get you an update. We have a staff member go in there and certainly talk to Jared, he'll give you the details of what's going on. It's an ongoing field, but we just didn't want you to think we weren't
Is
aware
there
of it.
any move by the developer to bring it into the city, or is this an attempt to do it tear down the
I'm gonna tell you my personal opinion, it is going to annex the environment, different density. It is part of our annexation declaration, but they have sent a letter and we're recognizing that, but I believe we will see, there's logistic reasons why that would be beneficial for them and us to have.
Okay, I can probably squeeze,
One
I can
more?
probably squeeze one more thing in before we break there, because it's really quick. I got some information from a council member that I thought I'd throw out for you, because we haven't talked about it for quite a while, it's probably a different council. When it comes to quarterly and biannual and annual reports from different service providers, how often do you want to hear from them people? Because I got told that we hear from them too often, or at least too quick, and so I'm just trying to juggle that, and I need a consensus. How often you want to hear from Riley? How often you want to hear from the chief of police?
Do we have to answer with him in the
Well,
room?
yeah. But these
Jinx
guys,
just got
these
awkward.
guys are really
I'm good
essential
with it.
services. They're
Right.
really why we exist.
Once a year.
Wasatch Front is one of
Once every
those,
few months.
animal services, another one of those.
Maybe they can send us a report, but they don't have to.
2 years?
Here.
So that's what I'm saying, you want less, or you want to keep where it's at?
I'm good with
With the
these
exception of
guys,
these two, maybe less.
because these guys are essential service, and I'm not saying the others aren't important,
Your residents
but
pay
it's
for those
different.
other services, so I'm just wondering.
So just my opinion, I'm fine with the frequency and the level of reports we have right now. For one thing, and they serve an education, they have an educational purpose for me, so well, not just for me, but for the residents, and that's the point. It may be very similar information as the previous report that I heard, but the chances that the same residents are hearing that this time versus that time are unlikely. And so I think anytime we inject any element that shows what their taxpayer dollars are paying for, I'm supportive and I'm gonna listen to it, and I don't consider it a waste of time. I think that is where our dollars go. And devoting time to allow those service partners to share the good work that they're doing is not time wasted in my mind.
It's one of those things that, here again, I don't do anything without getting approval or direction from council, so I'm looking here by that direction again.
I feel very humbled
I think
by what
we're, I
you
think
just said,
going
and
down
you're
quarterly has
right.
been fine.
Sherry, are you still in the same space where it's at? Mayor?
Yeah.
I think Nicole makes fantastic points, and I'd love
You
to
can't
have her
go
say
against
anything
that.
else.
Okay. Where's the mic?
How do you say
Throw
no
it
to
down.
this,
Fine, you're right.
Next
Mayor, I'm
time,
done
next
for
time we're
until we
doing
get-
this, and you give us that look of, again, we're gonna remind you, you're the reason that we're doing it.
All right, fine.
Mayor, I need to come back in where we're meeting for the street items, and then we have a full score for property.
Okay. So I will
Make a motion.
accept the motion to temporarily adjourn our city council work meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.